Bill has climbed every 14er in Colorado, and he happens to be my amazing uncle. I had the chance to interview him, and he has some great stories. We also get to talk to his beautiful wife, Kathy. Hi, Bill.
Well, good afternoon and welcome to Barrow Mesa. It's nice to have you here and your whole family.
I know. You have been so welcoming to us every year.
And the big news is you just climbed the highest peak in Colorado. That is really exciting. Mount Elbert.
That's crazy, isn't it?
Well, it's not crazy. It was accomplishment.
It was accomplishment. I didn't think I was going to make it.
Oh, you just kept taking another step. And when you got to the top, you knew you made it.
Yes.
Even if you died on the way down, you made it.
Exactly. I had pictures to prove it.
There you go. and it was the backpack that kept everybody alert.
Exactly. That red alert backpack that I had to have. Yes.
So your second 14er.
Second.
You were 13 when you climbed Sneffels?
Yes, in 1996, thanks to you.
In the deep snow and steep and dangerous.
Yes. Yeah, people tell me like Sneffels, they're surprised because that was really difficult.
Of the 54 14ers in Colorado, there's like 15 or 18 that are considered black diamond, which means the most dangerous and the most challenging.
Yeah.
Sneffels is one of those. Yeah.
What's the top one? Do they say?
It could be Capitol. It could be the Maroon Bells. It could be Pyramid.
Okay.
Yeah, Crestone Peak and Needles. Those are all up at the top. Ones that take the most lives every year. And Capitol of the last 5 years is the winner. It gets about 5 people that die a year on Capitol.
Wow. So it's not an easy feat to climb a 14er.
Well, you want to have some training before and have some appreciation of danger.
What do you think if you could give advice to anyone who says, I want to climb a 14er? What would be the first one you would suggest?
A lot of the people that die are from out of state and they're from below 6,000 feet, like 1,000 feet. They don't have the lung capacity, number one. Number two, they go up with tennis shoes and a little bottle of water and they walk in 5 miles. And within minutes, a snowstorm will come or a big rain and sleet storm, and all they have is a t-shirt, shorts, and 1 bottle of water, and they end up dying from exposure and lack of water.
So what's been your favorite mountain to climb?
Well, the one I've climbed the most is Sneffels. I've probably climbed it 10 times, and Sneffels, the reason why I like it so much, it has all of the variety of any of the other peaks. It starts off with beautiful lowland flowers and meadows, and before that timber, and then high mountains all around. And as you go up, it keeps changing, and the profile of the mountains around, like tea kettle across from Sneffels becomes visible. It's like a kettle that's pouring tea out of it. But Sneffels is great.
That's the one when you have people come. Is that the one you most often?
Well, it's near and it's exciting, and in the summer when the snow's gone, it's less dangerous.
Yeah.
And I actually judge people before I take them there. I wouldn't take neophytes. See, I knew you could do it at 13, so that's why we went.
I said that all along when people said, what's one of your biggest accomplishments? And I always said climbing a 14er was a big accomplishment of mine. Yep. And that's thanks to you. You're an inspiration to me. And
I started when we got married in 67 and we moved here in 68, and I started climbing mountains in 69.
Wow.
I did 45 14ers in 3 years. So almost every weekend, all summer, Friday night, I was on the road with my buddies to climb a 14er.
Have you ever climbed one by yourself?
I have, and that's a no-no, but I have done several of them.
Okay.
Yeah, it's not a wise thing to do, but...
you always suggest having at least one other person along.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, how does your wife feel about you climbing all these 14ers?
Well,
I always knew how important it was to him, and so I was happy for him to go do it. And for some reason, I was not worried about him because I knew he wanted to come back as much as I wanted him to come back. And I also knew that he had aborted climbs when it wasn't, when it got dangerous or whatever. And he was smart about what he was doing. He went with people I trusted. And so, I was good with it.
What did I tell you before I left to go climb mountains? I said, if I don't come back the night I'm supposed to come back, don't worry. Right. Sometimes you get caught on the mountain like Blanca, and you can't come out, and you got to wait until the next day until the storm goes away, and then you get out. So anyhow, you didn't worry until...
No, I didn't. And that was, of course, pre smartphones. So he left, and I expected him back when he said. That's how it went. And I was very, very blessed because I really didn't worry about him.
Well, thanks for sharing with us,
You're
Kathy.
very welcome.
Now, when you started climbing 14ers, it wasn't as big as it is today.
No, when we first started, we'd rarely see anybody else on the mountain, and only the trained and vigorous, determined people would be on the mountains. And you might see them, you might pass them, or they might be coming down. But I don't think for the first 40 mountains I climbed, 14ers, I didn't see anybody on the top.
And there wasn't a trail, really. A lot of times you were trying to find the route.
There was only one book, Robert Orm's, that gave you any indication of where the mountain was and how to get there. And it was really kind of loose, so it just gave you an indication. You'd start off on Forest Service trails, and they wouldn't go to the top of the mountain. They'd just go by, and then you just looked at the mountain and went through the brush and rocks and straight up to the top.
That's amazing.
And when we started, the first 1,000 people had registered and climbed all of the 14ers. And then I was in 68, 9, something like that. And now there's hundreds of thousands of people that have climbed them all.
Because they don't have registers on the mountains.
Not anymore. They used to have registers up until about 30 years ago, but there were so many people climbing, they would have to send a crew up there every 3 weeks or something to replace the registers with new ones. So that became kind of impossible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what made you want to climb 14ers? Did you do one and then decide, yes, I want to keep going, or?
Well, I was working at Hewlett-Packard, and there were people there that had climbed 14ers, and I got interested, and I talked to them. And then there was a dude there from Hungary, El Henshaw, that taught rock climbing classes. And so by talking to a few folks, I knew that there was 20 or so mountains you would have to use ropes and pitons and carabiners and that you strap to your shoes. Crampons, all those things. So he told us how to use that stuff and how to climb rocks and that kind of thing.
And you're originally from Minnesota.
Right.
And you moved to Colorado.
Mm-hmm.
And you've been here how many years?
Well, we've been married 55 years, so we've been in Colorado 55 years, give or take a month.
And we're on your property right now. You retired and then came to this property, right? And what did you do before?
First of all, I came from northern Minnesota. I came from a town called Ogama, which is Anishinaabe for chief. And I was raised on the reservation, so we had a lot of experience in the woods and lakes and living with Native American folks. And that was all good. I spent 7 years in the U.S. Navy, and then we got married, and then we moved to the Denver area, Wheat Ridge, and I worked for Boise Cascade for a year. That turned out it was kind of fun towards the end, but I knew that there was not a huge future there. So then I worked for Hewlett-Packard for 5.5 years in Colorado Springs as a staff accountant. And then I decided that they were systematically buying my soul. So we started driving west in Colorado and we looked around and we said, this is kind of neat. Nobody lives here. It's beautiful. It's green. It's irrigated. And there's mountains every place. We hired a realtor, and he showed us 3 places. First one was a little worn-out single trailer. The second was a worn-out house that didn't even have running water. It just had a little stream behind it. And then he showed us an orchard, and we bought the orchard and did that for 33 years.
33 years?
Yeah.
And what was on the orchard?
We raised apples, peaches, pears, cherries, and prunes.
Oh, what was your favorite?
Probably apples.
Tell me a story about one of your favorite mountains or a time where you were scared or had a lot of emotion.
Probably the closest to dying potentially was Blanca Little Bear in the Sangre de Cristo Mountains close to Alamosa. We went up on a Friday afternoon. We had the CEO of Hewlett-Packard Colorado Springs with us, El Henshaw, the rock climbing teacher, Jim Walker, a friend from Hewlett-Packard, and a guy by the name of Dale Watkin, who had never climbed 14ers but was an expert rock climber.
Oh.
So that's the first time I've ever done that, and I would never do it again. But I would never take a guy on a super mountain that had never done alpine climbing. Well, we did it, and we got there Friday afternoon. We hiked up almost to timberline. It was about 7 miles in, set up our base camp, and it was in the fall, so it's time for weather to start coming in.
Yep.
We got up the next morning. We had about a 2-hour hike to get to the top of Blanca. And when we got to the top of Blanca, the weather had changed, and the wind was blowing hard, and it was sleeting. And there was a steel stake on the top of Blanca, which is the highest mountain in the Sangre de Cristo range. The ice crystals were absolutely vertical with the ground. It was blowing so hard that it would freeze and make this icicle straight out. We knew that wasn't good. So, and now there's a 2-mile ridge between Blanca and Little Bear. Very steep, 1,000 foot down on both sides, only about a foot wide with loose rocks. And we got to this 2-mile knife edge ridge, and El Henshaw looked at me and he said, "What do you think?" And I said, "Well, I can see the sun kind of breaking through there a bit, and it stopped raining. It was only raining on the ridge. At the summit was sleet and ice." I said, "I think we can do it." And normally that 2 miles you could probably do in 3 hours.
Yeah.
3 to 4 hours, because it's difficult. But so we started out and we got about a quarter of the way, and the weather changed, and it started snowing and sleeting, and the entire ridge turned into solid ice.
Ooh.
So we couldn't friction climb anymore, where you put your boot on the side of the rock and it doesn't slide off. You could only do level hiking steps. So you have to find a flat spot that was perfectly flat and step there to get the next one. So about halfway across, there were 2 of us in one, 2 on one rope and 3 on another. About halfway across, Dale Watkins decided he was going to die. He said, "There's no way one of us is not going to fall and die." And he said, "I'm going to untie from this rope. I'm not going to be part of this 3-man rope tied together," where we'd then 2 guys would belay and 1 would hike, and then 2 would belay and the other guy would climb, and that's how we did. And I said, "Dale, sit your ass down on this rock and don't say a word. We're a team here. We're staying together. We're going to be careful, and we're going to make it."
Yeah.
And he backed down. So finally, so we started at 5 in the morning. Now it's about 5 in the evening.
Ooh.
It's starting to get, the sun's going, well, there's no sun. It was still snowing. We get to Little Bear, and of the 5, there were 2 that were beat to shit. I mean, they could hardly move anymore. We knew there was a problem here, and we knew it was going to get dark, and we had a 3-mile walk back to our high base camp. So I knew that I had El Henshaw. I knew we had to go back to the base camp, get flashlights, and go back up and help these dudes down, because it was going to be midnight at the way they were going before they get back to base camp. So we go back up and find them. They were about halfway back, and one step at a time, barely moving. And we met up with them and got them back. And now let's say it was 7:30, 8 o'clock. I said, I think if we pack up our base camp, we can get to the car by midnight or something. And they all crawled in. They didn't even answer me. They all crawled into their tents and never said a word. So the next morning, of course, we have no phones. This is 100 years ago. And we get down to the town of, I think, San Luis, and go to a phone booth. I think it was Hal Edmondson, the CEO, called Hewlett-Packard, because all of Hewlett-Packard, with the president of the company having not returned, we must have all died on the mountain, because they knew this freak storm had just come into the Sangres. So he calls and says, "We're all alive. It'll be noon by the time we get back," or something. In the meantime, Katha's in a murder case at the courthouse, and she's been sequestered. And her parents are there taking care of our son, John, fortunately, while she's sequestered, and I'm dying on the mountain, or lost on the mountain.
Yes.
Anyhow, we got back to town. I think we were all in one car. Anyhow, we got back Colorado Springs. I get home, change my clothes, and go to Hewlett-Packard. Like I said, I have things I had to get done that day, even though I had just come off a mountain and was half dead. I walked in, and there was nothing but people at my desk the whole afternoon. They wanted to know what the hell happened, and why was the CEO thought he was dead along with the rest of us. And so anyhow, I didn't get any work done. I was just telling people what happened.
Oh, I bet.
And you were the only one.
I'm the one that went to work, yeah.
Oh, really? Everyone else?
Everyone went home and went to bed. They were smarter than I was.
So you got all the questions.
I got
then.
the glory, yeah. I got to tell them all the shit, so.
Well, thanks so much. Is there anything else you want to share about 14ers in general?
Well, there's some dangerous ones up there, and the thing is to wear the right clothes, have a backpack with water in it, and extra clothes in case the weather gets bad. Check the weather before you go. And if you're from Minnesota and have never climbed a mountain and you live at 900 feet and you're starting at 8,000 and you're going to 14, you want to do a couple little experimental hikes before you do a 14er.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I probably should have done a little more of that on my last
shit,
climb.
At 13, your dad takes you up and we get into a snow goddamn sleet and we into a snowfield, and he said, oh my God, I'm going to lose my whole family. They're all going to just slide to the bottom and it's going to be over. Because he had both daughters and himself.
Yes.
Yeah. The best thing about you is you always smile. I've never known anybody that's as positive as you. I mean, even when there's shit in, she smiles.
Without a doubt.
Yeah. I mean, I'll bet you were smiling all the way up Elbert a couple of days ago, even though you were that far from probably passing out.
Did I tell you what those guys said to me when I was coming up the mountain?
No.
I was coming up the mountain and I said, hey. And this guy goes, that is the friendliest hey we have ever heard from someone coming up the mountain now.
I can believe it.
I said, well, I am from Minnesota.
And you're the best of your mom and dad. So
yes.
Thanks for being part of our life.
Well, I really, truly appreciate you
you're
introduced us to Colorado and the love we have for it.
It's always fun to have you here. And now we might even get your car fixed so you can get back to Minnesota.
Maybe.
And if it doesn't, then you spend the summer here. What the hell?
Well, I think that would be okay.
Yeah.
You've climbed all of them numerous times.
Yeah.
Is there some that you've only climbed once?
Yeah.
And said, I'm never doing that again?
Well, there is Pyramid.
Oh.
My brother comes from Minnesota, and he's probably in college, maybe finishing college or no, out of high school, college. We're scheduled to climb Pyramid, which is part of the Maroon Bells and the Deadly Neighbor Pyramid.
Okay.
We're scheduled to do it. And I said, Paul, I've got a buddy lined up. We're going to do Pyramid tomorrow. And he came in the day before and he said, oh, come along. So we go in, we camp right below the mountain, and then it's really steep and really loose rock to get to the upper hard rock. And we knew it was a tough mountain. We got up to the keyhole, up to where you get into good rock, and he was really getting tired and he was really frightened. And then we had to do, there's a vertical wall that you have to go up. So my buddy Jim Walker went up first, and then he put us on belay and helped us up. And we got to the next ledge, and then we could get to the summit. I was the last one down, so I belayed them. And the leader can't fall. That's the rule. The leader can't fall, because if he does, he's dead. That's just how it works. So anyhow, it was a tough mountain. And then when I got back, I told Kath, I'm never going to climb that again.
Okay.
Well, about 2 years later, there's Dan Kipp calls and said, I've never done Pyramid. How about taking me up Pyramid? So Jim Walker and I took him back up. It was easier the second time. We knew the route the next time. We didn't have the route down the first time, so we went right for the summit, which was really dangerous. There's a way of going around the summit to the back, and then you can get up with less danger.
Okay.
So the second time, it wasn't quite as dangerous. And we didn't have a neophyte along, my brother. Jim, the first time when he was along, Jim Walker and I, so we got partway down, and there's this beautiful scree field with rocks about 2 inches. And you jump in that and you slide, you jump and you slide. We went down maybe a fifth of a mile, and he had never done that before. He was afraid to, so he walked around and he caught up with us. He said, you guys, by the time you're 60, you aren't going to have any knees left. And he was right. I had both of mine replaced.
So, Bill, what do you recommend for someone who tries to climb a 14er and gets partway up and decides for whatever reason to turn around?
Smartest thing you can do, because if you don't feel comfortable, most of the mountains get more treacherous as you get higher, and of course you lose oxygen.
So most people kind of know their limitations, and
unfortunately, no, they don't know that until it's too late, some of them.
So the smart ones know, and they turn around and then go train and try it again.
It's like Capitol Peak. It's really a dangerous peak. Knife edge getting to it. It's a loose rock going up, but there's only one kind of safe way to do it. And people come from out of state, go up that way, and they say there's got to be a better way to do it. We're not going to go back the same way we went up. It's just too damn dangerous. And they try a different route. And any other route is 10 times more dangerous than the one that's prescribed, the one that's the normal route. And that's when 5 people more or less every year die on Capitol.
Because they take a different route.
They come because they don't like the way they went up, and they know they're going to fall, so they're going to die. So they just think, well, we've got to do better than this. And it gets worse. And then,
So what type of training would you recommend for a flatlander coming? How long does it take, and what would you recommend they do to try and prep
yeah,
to go up?
you always want to try something less than 14 first. You want to do a 10, you want to do a 12, and then you do a little more difficult 12,000-foot mountain. And then if you know you can do that, then you know you can do an easier 14er.
Yeah.
And it
You
is
know-
fact that it takes 6 months to fully acclimate.
It takes 6 months to get your red blood cells to the level where you've got the maximum amount of air.
Well, like, we've come out several summers now with the boys,
Yeah.
and we've attempted and done a few of, we did Green Mountain, I believe,
Yeah.
one time, and
Yeah.
Bald Mountain, I think, was the other one.
You did Bald Mountain. That's where the salamanders were with the they had red gills sticking out.
Yes, and
Yeah.
we had the mama bear with the cub.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and it's let me see, it's 11,000.
Yep.
Yeah, and some steep spots in there, and some drop offs, and yeah.
Yeah, I was surprised by how much stamina you really need
Yeah,
to, 'cause
especially
it's-
when you don't have the oxygen. Yep.
Yeah.
It's uphill completely. And I think I just underestimated that when we climbed Mount Elbert.
Yeah,
You think, oh, it won't be that bad.
Yeah.
I can handle it. But you don't realize that it is 4 miles uphill
yeah.
continuously with no break.
Yeah,
Like,
and you're starting probably at around 8,000, and you're going to 14. Maybe a little higher than 8, but something like that. Yeah.
yeah, I think it was about 4,500
Okay.
elevation gain. So we went through a lot of deciding on which mountain to climb, and we decided to do Mount Elbert mostly because the road was accessible to get there.
And it was close to Leadville.
It was close to Leadville, and we wanted to acclimate
Yeah.
ourselves to
Yeah.
Leadville.
Yeah.
Do you think that was a good choice to do Mount Elbert as a...
Well, there's other mountains not too far from Leadville that would have been much easier. One would be Quandary. It's only about 6 mile round trip, I think, but there's no danger there.
Okay.
It's a nice trail. There's some boulders, and you get to the top. There's a little scree, but you get to the top, and then there's a ridge that looks just absolutely unclimbable, and it is. So you get to see danger when you get to the top, but you don't have to do danger.
Got it.
And it's not that long, and you start pretty high, so you don't have 4,500 feet of elevation
okay.
gain or so.
So that would be one that you would recommend
Yeah,
us
for
to
sure.
do
Yeah,
next.
yeah.
When I've trained for an entire year.
There you go. I just might mention that I climbed Mount Elbert 3 times. First time with a partner, and we started quite high off of Independence Pass Road, so we were probably at least 1,000 feet higher than where you started. And there used to be a nice trail, but then they closed that trail. The second time I did it with my brother and his brother-in-law. Never should have. Both neophytes. Damn near lost them both, but we got up there, and it's almost always windy on Elbert, and on that day, we had to actually get on our hands and knees for a while, or we would have been blown off the ridge. But we did it, and they got home, and they're still alive. No, one had a normal death, and the other guy's still alive and doing well. And then the last time was with my daughter. She was in the Peace Corps, and she was doing Mount Elbert for her graduation lesson to finish Colorado Outward Bound. And one of the guys going up Elbert sprained his foot, so she had to take him down and couldn't get the summit. But she said, oh, my dad will take me up at the end of the summer or something like that. So she goes on down, and she had just climbed 3 other peaks, and then she had to do a 14-mile run around Turquoise Lake to finish her course. But a couple months later, we went up and did it, and she even showed me the rock she sat on for 3 days during her solo. It's a 23-day Outward Bound experience, and of that 23 days, 3 days is total isolation in a solo place with nobody else around. And you just have your journal, and they just give you a couple granola bars and a few peanuts. That's all you have. And you have a stream. I always have you next to a stream so you can get water. But for 3 days, you think about your life and the life of the planet and the life of the world. And she came back a different person.
I think more people should do that.
I do too. Yep.
What an experience.
Yep. And that was the impetus for her then to join Peace Corps and go to the Dominican Republic for 2 years and work with people that have almost nothing wealth-wise.
Yeah.
They just have beautiful jungles, and they have cacao, and they have their family, and they're happy people.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, congratulations again on Albert. I mean,
Thank you.
You and your husband and your oldest son. Yep.
I'm pretty sure I hold the record now for the longest time it takes anyone to summit Mount
I don't
Albert.
think so. There's other folks that maybe got to the summit and couldn't come down, and they fortunately brought a good jacket along, and they spent that night at the summit and came out the next day.
That could be.
Yeah.
Now, you were telling me a story about the cornice.
Oh, yeah.
The cornice.
Yeah, that was the South Maroon. You climb South Maroon in the spring because the snow is still frozen. But we got it. We were a couple weeks late. It was in April, and we were at the end of April. We should have been at the middle. And so we started out, and the sun came out, and it got soft. And we were going through waist-deep snow for a mile. Got to the top, did the summit. We were coming off, and there was this giant cornice. And there were 5 of us on one rope, which was stupid, but that's what we did. The last guy came off, and the whole cornice collapsed. And he goes flying by with this massive amounts of ice and snow, and 3 other guys, another guy goes by, and there's 3 of us doing ice axe arrest. It jerked 2 of those guys out, and fortunately mine held, and I was able to stop the other 4 from ending up at the bottom of the mountain in boulders as big as houses. It happens, but we got blessed.
And there are times you just it's too difficult, and you know that
Yep.
it's time to turn around.
Yep, I've done that more than once. Climbed the wrong mountain a few times and found out it wasn't the 14er. And then next week you go back and do it again. My brother Jim and I did snowmass, and first year he came, he lost his sleeping bag on the way up, and it gets down to 0 up there. So we couldn't continue, so we went, but we never did find it. And we saw nobody on the trail, nobody at the mountain, nobody climbing. And but it must have been an animal that hauled it away. Some bear thought it'd be just great for his den or something.
Perfect. They're probably sleeping real good now.
Yeah. So he comes the next year and we do it again. And this time I provide the sleeping bag and I tie it into his backpack. So we get to the lake, we camp, and then we do snowmass, but in the snow. But it was cold enough that it hadn't gotten soft, so it was just kicking steps into the snow to get to the summit.
Did you prefer to climb it in the winter or the summer? Or
It depends upon there was a safe time and a not safe time to climb some mountains. Some are safer when there's snow and the snow is turned into ice, so it's hard. It buries the loose rocks, so the rocks don't come on you.
Okay.
Like South Maroon, you want to do that. The safest time is when the snow is there and it's frozen. Soft enough so you can kick steps as you go up,
Okay.
but not so you have to go to your waist to get through it.
One of the things he didn't talk about, which was really important, is that you find people that you climb well with, and those are the people, and you respect them and you trust them. That's the biggest thing, and that's who you want to climb with. Not that you can't ever climb with anyone else, but you want to be very careful that you climb with people you trust. You would not leave each other. You will follow the rules, and you all know what you're doing.
Yeah.
So he made some lifelong friends.
And all of your 3 kids, did they enjoy climbing?
Oh, yes. Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And Luke is probably, the youngest is probably the one who's climbing the most. The other 2 are quite busy, but they certainly climbed.
Now, have any of them climbed all of them?
No.
Okay.
No. They go out more for climbing a mountain in the vicinity.
Yeah.
Rather than making the 14ers a goal. That has, and now I know of some people, someone in particular, who decided the 14ers were way too busy, and so he did all the 13ers.
Okay.
And there's many, many, many of them, and it took him a while, and there was, I think finally when he did Lizard Head, he took a guide, because that one is so tough. Yeah, that's another whole realm.
Yeah.
climbing 13ers. And I have no idea how many people do that.
We don't hear about it as
No.
often, I
No,
feel
you
like.
don't.
And
No.
it's really, I mean, when you get up to 13,000 feet, that you're pretty high and you can see a lot too.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yes.
Have you climbed any 13ers?
Not that I know of.
Okay,
think
and you've
so.
climbed the one,
The 114er. Sneffels.
Sneffels, and
Yeah.
you share that with your brother Ed.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And one of the nice things about that is it's over on this side of the mountain. So when we drive south, we often see it.
Yeah.
And that's nice. It's a nice reminder that, wow, I really did do that.
That's what I kept saying to myself when we were at Mount Albert. When we were driving, I looked at it and I go, I can't believe I did that. Like, it's amazing what you can do when you're in it.
Yes.
And you don't realize it, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh,
I did.
my gosh. I did it.
Yeah, it's good for one's, I don't know. It's
Yeah.
just exhilarating and says things to you about yourself that maybe you didn't know before. Yeah.
Now, your daughter said something to you that you'll always remember.
Oh, this was wonderful. So we were a very active family, and our children were raised with climbing and backpacking and all of that. When they got a little older, then I was the slow one, and everybody else was out there. So we were all backpacking together one time, and I said, oh, you guys, I'm sorry. I know I make us slower. And my daughter looked at me and said, Mom, you're here. That's what matters. And I have never forgotten that, and it stays with me about a lot of other things too. Anyway.
I think that's special.
It is.
I love that.
Yeah, I do too.
You know, it's those things that people tell you that you'll always remember.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. That's certainly one of them in my life.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's why we like to share what we have here, because to us it's special, and
Yeah.
you always want to share those things. And so sometimes you have to say what you said, this is for me. And I think sometimes as a woman and a mother and a wife, you're always concerned about everybody else. And you don't, like you said, you don't want to hold them up. You don't want to cause any difficulties for anybody else. But it's hard to let go of that, but we need to.
You attempted Mount Albert, correct?
Yes, I did.
What did you do to train before going on this 14?
Well, first of all, I should say I'm from Minnesota, but I did, there are some bluffs near where I live, and did some pretty strenuous hikes there. It didn't prepare me for the elevation issue with my lungs. On the way up, I tried my best, but I got to the point that I felt I was breathing far too deeply to try and get enough oxygen.
Mm-hmm.
To the point that at times I had to stop a lot because my legs at times were almost even a little bit rubbery. So at my age, I decided a little discretion was needed. But it was a beautiful hike, beautiful area, and I made it above tree line, which was a pretty good deal in itself, and I may try it again, but I was not prepared properly, even though I tried.
Would you have done anything differently?
Well, the other variable was I went up with four of us, went up, and it was a wide variety of being able to handle it. And just ego-wise, you want to try and keep up. I think that me and the person who was closest to my level of being ready, that we should have kind of walked it, and then the other two who were much more prepared or ready should have done it.
So you felt a little pressure.
I felt a little pressure, and I felt like I was slowing the other hikers down. And the other thing is it was taking really a long time, and I'm not a real patient individual. So there were, like anything, there's a lot of factors as to why you make what decision you make.
Now you climbed your first 14er. How old were you then?
Let's see, I think it was 46, 48, something like that. And I was lucky enough to do that with someone who knew what they were doing and my two daughters, which was very special. And I was obviously in better condition at that time in my life. Having somebody encourage you to take short steps and so on. Bill, our leader, was a big deal, big help. Not that We didn't have that going on this time, but the other part was psychological on the way up. The area we thought was going to be relatively easy was anything but easy, and I did like 3 miles of that, and I just thought, I'm getting to the point that I could trip and then I had to come down yet after that. So I just thought, well, enjoy the part of the hike that I did and move on.
Will you try another 14er?
I think I would.
Would you pick that Mount Albert or would you pick another one?
I think I would like to try Massive and take the time it takes. I don't know what I could do at my age to prepare any better than I did other than live in a high elevation area for a while.
So do you think it would have been helpful to stay more than a few days in high elevation?
I am told that it takes 6 months to be in a high elevation situation to really acclimate your lungs.
And how old are you?
I'm 74. Thought I was in pretty good shape, but not good enough for the elevation. Next time I'm going to go and play the golf course that's nearby, that is the highest elevation golf course around. That I think I can handle.
I'm so glad he came back each time. He's so cute, isn't he, with his little gray beard?
Lamborn Bill. Oh, look, there's water here, too.
Oh, weird. It's yours.
Yeah.
Are they,
They're...
What's up is down, what's left is right. Chasing stars and holding you. I can't see the end, but we'll see it through.